The truth about 7 out of 10 games. Why is every game a 7 out of 10? Do you want to know why I think a lot of games are a 7 out of 10? It's because the people that do reviews are afraid of giving really bad reviews to popular studios because of access journalism. Nah, man, that's the Matrix. Here's the thing. Is that the Matrix was real. IGN gave Death Stranding a 6. Well, let's take a look.
I can't believe it's happened again. I'm sick of seeing it everywhere. It haunts me. It's in my nightmares. It's in all of my waking hours. It's everywhere. The number 7. Another games journalist has given another video game a 7 out of 10. And today I'm going to tell you why that's fairly common, actually, because there is, like, a pretty good reason for it, or maybe not necessarily a good reason. I'm not trying to color this reason in any direction. It's just a reason that you see 7 out of 10s as being common, to the extent where we now sometimes refer to 7 as like an average, which is weird, but allow me to explain. First, if you don't know me, sometimes people meme on me for mentioning this, but you'd be surprised the amount of people who comment on my videos who don't even know what my current job is and assume that I'm a full-time YouTuber, let alone a job I used to have, so that's why I sometimes say it. Turns out people don't know stuff. And I used to work at IGN. I was a writer there for 3 whole years, which makes me exceptionally qualified.
I didn't know that.
The most professional, lauded source on the internet. Educated to such a high degree. I started, and I feel like that really sells it. The one person on the planet equipped to tell you that step 1 before we get into the rest of this video, some of y'all take game reviews way too seriously. I will explain why the 7 out of 10 is so common and why it's...
To me, it's like if somebody puts out a bullshit game review, I think absolutely you should call it out. Yeah. No, I'm about it. Like, I want to see it
memed because it's so common and that it doesn't make sense. I feel like so many conversations about game reviews would be like so much more chill if you just remember that it's just some fucking guy's opinion. I used to be that fucking guy. It's just some fucking guy has an opinion on something. That's all a game review is. The fucking guy who writes the review is no more or less qualified to have an opinion on any other fucking guy on the street about a game. That is my genuine opinion. That is the opinion that I held when I did it and got paid.
No, she's right about that. And that's a fucking fact. That's what I wish more people realized, is that if you're a game reviewer, what do you think? The people that are writing these reviews have some sort of like divine insight into video games? Get the fuck out of here. No, they don't. They're playing the same games that you are, probably worse than you do. So what do you mean? Yeah, they barely play games. They probably don't play the games as much as you do, right? At least specific ones, right? Absolutely.
For it, I personally do not consider game reviews to be journalism, even though they technically are by definition of the word. But again, it's just...
The problem is that when the game reviewers put in... The problem is not that game reviewers are held to a higher standard. The problem is that game reviewers have different standards than customers have. And I think that's where the really big issue is that game developers, or sorry, game journalists review games on criteria that actual players don't care about, and vice versa. They don't review based on things that players do care about. And so there's like a massive misrepresentation that happens.
Fucking guy's opinion, man. And they certainly are not objective and do not strive to be and shouldn't be, because they are opinion-based. They are not reporting, they're just, oh, fucking guy has an opinion. And to be clear, before somebody gets upset with me, not being sexist here, women can also be some fucking guy. Like I said, I used to be some fucking guy. Gender neutral. It's really just that the guy who does it for IGN has an editorial policy that he has to abide by, probably has more writing experience than the average person, and more people will read it. But that is really the only difference. No one's opinion on a video game is any more or less valid than anybody else's. The only exception to that, and like I feel that way about films and stuff too, the only exception to that is when in my opinion, someone who has a ton of expertise is the one reviewing something. Tarantino, not just some fucking guy. Miyazaki, Hideo Kojima, not just some fucking guy. They go beyond the sphere of some fucking guy in which all of the rest of us exist, but otherwise 100% of us, IGN, GameSpot, Kinda Funny, you in my comment section, we're all just some fucking guy. It's actually pretty crazy when you think about it. Like, really, the whole world is just run by just a guy.
I think here's the problem. I think Black Myth Wukong is a really good indicator of what this problem is that when IGN gave Black Myth Wukong an 8, and I think it was another studio, another place gave it a 6 out of 10. And the main reason why they were giving it low ratings was because of something that somebody at the studio said or did. That becomes a huge problem when every single game reviewing company has this same criteria. Space Marine 6 out of 10, right? Got 2. A below Golem? Yeah, exactly. She's ignoring the innate bias that Axis journalists have. It's a longer video. So, like, I mean, she might cover that later on. So, I mean, there's plenty of time to go over that. But what I'm saying is that these game reviews, not only are they biased, but they are extremely biased, and all of the different game review places are doing the same type of bias. That's the issue. Is that, like, I mean, you might as well just have one big game review company because all of them are functionally the same thing. There's no objectivity. Yeah, exactly. And, like, I guarantee you, if I made a video and I reviewed a game and I said this game is bad because of, like, some bullshit, people would call me out too. That's the way it would be for anybody.
What are any of us doing? Think about how many things you don't know how to do or how many mistakes that you've made, and you're still here, and that's just the same as the rest of us. None of us have any idea what's really going on. We're just some fucking guy who got a job. There it is. Okay, but first, 7 out of 10. Why is it so common? Why does it feel like 7 out of 10 has become the average video game score, at the very least, in the AAA gaming space? Why is everything a 7 out of 10? Why is it so common? What happened to the other half of the scale? Why aren't we using it? In my opinion, it actually is because 7 out of 10 kind of has become average for AAA games, but maybe not for the reasons that most people would think. Important to note, before we get into this, that different websites do have different scales. A 9 for IGN is not the same as...
You guys want to see the scale? There's some scales right there. There's no objective measurement here. Like, I understand how, like, they want to define this and they like trying to create some rubric or something like that. But let's be honest. The dartboard is a scale? Yeah, a lot of this is a dartboard.
A 9 for some other website. You have any feelings about reviews that you look up what their individual scales mean? One thing that I see people mistake all the time.
Do you remember how many places gave Starfield a really high rating? That was very upsetting for me to see that.
Times that they think a 10 out of 10 is a perfect score or that it's a perfect game. For IGN, for example, a 10 does not mean perfect. It just means masterpiece, because no game is perfect except for Portal, and maybe also Deadly Premonition, and Doom 93,
Sekiro,
and Tunic. But that's the list of perfect video games completed. Unless you have anything to add, editor of this video, Jacob Fullerton. The floor is yours.
Gungan Frontier. All your favorite characters are there. You get to play with Fombas and Falumpa sets and plant trees on the moon. And the UI is a clam. 10 out of 10. Perfect game.
There we go. Comprehensive list of perfect video games. No, really, none exist. 10 out of 10 means masterpiece, right? It is a masterpiece. It doesn't mean it's perfect. But for whatever website that you read reviews from or whatever discourse you're involved in, I recommend checking out their individual scales. And if you look at a 7 on the IGN scale, 7 means good. Not great, just good. When I worked there and I reviewed video games and movies and stuff sometimes, Dan Stapleton, the executive editor of reviews at IGN, told me to treat what score I would have if I was having trouble as what would I say if someone walked up to me on the street and asked. So a 7 would be, yeah, it's good. It's not great. It's good. It's good. Because, to be honest, assigning a score to however many thousand words you've written where you try to really explain every single nuance of this thing and why you do or don't like it is extremely difficult and sucky, but it's just really important to audiences. Like, it gets clearly so much engagement from these websites. People want the opinions distilled into a little number. It generates so much discourse. It generated this video, technically, and probably many videos about 7 out of 10 or 10 out of 10 game reviews that exist on this platform. Audiences clearly are very attached to the review score. For writers, it sucks. So when you're having...
I don't think that people are attached to it for that reason. I think the reason why people are attached to it is because the way that they're reviewed isn't respective of the way that people want them to be reviewed. That's the issue. That's where the complaints really come in. It's that, for example, like game reviews like hold priority and care about things that an average player doesn't care about. And I think that that's really where the issue is with the 7 out of 10. Because a lot of these games really aren't a 7 out of 10. Like, I can't see a universe where, like, and I think, like, really, if you take a step back and you ask yourself, what purpose do game reviews serve? And you think about it, right? What is the purpose of a game review? A purpose of a game review is to give the game, is to inform a customer and help a customer make a purchase choice, right? It's to inform a customer and help them make money, or sorry, help them spend money in the right way. So if the game reviews are deviating this much from what the public sentiment is, then it's very obvious that the game reviews are wrong, because the game reviews exist only as a tool to benefit customers in being able to make better purchasing decisions. And the big problem is that these game reviews are inaccurate. That's the problem. It's like polls. Yeah, exactly. The purpose is deviated at some point. Exactly. Wrong and biased. Yes, they are wrong and biased. Hades 2 got a 9 on IGN. Of course. I thought Hades 2 was a great game. I liked Hades 1 maybe a little bit more, but like I thought they were both good. You know nothing about ratings. The #1 reviewers gave Concord an 8 out of 10. I know, it's just crazy. It feels like people care about reviews a decade ago, but not anymore nowadays. I think that the reason why people care a lot about reviews is because reviews are quantitative metrics to measure the disparity between what people actually think and what's being published. So like, for example, a game like Star Wars Outlaws getting an 8 or like a 9 or a 7 even, this is very clearly a massive disparity between what the customers think. And that's what the problem is.
Trouble being like, I don't know what these words distill to. How am I going to figure that out? A good way to do it is, what would you say someone came up to you on the street? So a 7 is, it's good. It's not great, it's good. And firstly, that does encompass a lot of video games, especially when you're a reviewer. People who review games or play games professionally are, by virtue of the thing that is their job, playing a lot more video games than most people. Now, before you get mad at me for that, it's just that they're allowed to do it during work hours. So they're playing more video games.
I think that they play more video games, but the problem that I think a lot of reviewers have with playing games is that they play them at a very shallow level. And you can see that, and it really just makes sense, right? Is that a lot of reviewers, and this is just like a problem fundamentally with like the meta of what like reviewing games is that you want to make a lot of reviews and you want to write a lot of reviews because those reviews generate ad revenue and they make you money. So the problem is that in a lot of cases where these game reviews, I think that the best example that I can give of this is New World. So New World, every single game review of New World, the screenshots that weren't included in the game review showed a character at level 18. It showed a character at level 11. Oh, wow, this game is great. Wow. Oh, there you go. Like, that means it's so good. And this is a problem. And the issue is that game reviews, while it is their job, that's a double-edged sword. Because the fact that it's their job means that they want to do it in a finite amount of time. They're not going to give the game as much time as maybe they should, and I think that's what happens. Is that like, and I think again, Black Myth Wukong, another great example. The biggest self-report from game reviewers is that all of them said there weren't any women in the game, but there's women all the time in Act 4. That it's all about them. So what does that tell me? That tells me you didn't play half the game. That's what I see.
Games than every other human who has a job that is not in the games industry because they're allowed to play games at work. So like by default, they have more hours on any given day in which they can/are playing video games. Sure. But because the average games journalist is able to play more video games than the average reader, it's kind of another reason that a review is just some fucking guy's opinion. What somebody who has played 1,000 games thinks of a game is inherently going to be different to what somebody who's only played 100 games thinks of a game, because you are coming into that with that wealth of knowledge, experience, and those set your expectations. Like, you might find something bland or generic because you've played 10 other games like it. If someone has played less games than you, they may not feel that way. Imagine somebody—
I think a really great example of what she's saying, I think that she's right about that, is that it's Diablo 4. I think Diablo 4 is a great game for casuals. It's a great game for people that aren't like really big gamers because it's pretty simple and it's easy to understand.
Playing Star Wars Outlaws as their very first Ubisoft game. I myself was like, I'm kind of burnt out of Star Wars. I'm kind of burnt out of the Ubisoft formula right now. This feels very samey. It's not grabbing me. So I tried and I decided that I wasn't going to play any more of it. But someone who's never played...
I feel like if your first game was playing Star Wars Outlaw, I feel like I'd probably start playing something. I'd like get into arts and crafts or something like that, right? PoE takes the cake. Yeah, but PoE is not... The thing is, like, PoE and Diablo 4 are not really competing for the same market share. Like, Diablo 4 is for casual players and PoE is for hardcore players. It's the same as, like, Escape from Tarkov and, like, Call of Duty. Like, they're just two different audiences.
Ubisoft game before might be like, holy shit, this is crazy. What is this? We're all just a bunch of guys who have just fucking opinions. It's all so subjective, and it's impossible not to be subjective. You're inherently bringing all of the experiences that you have had into every opinion that you form on pretty much everything. And that's why reviews are there. They're just an opinion. Secondly, I think there's a misconception that 5 is supposed to mean average on the scales, where it doesn't, at least not on any of that I've ever seen. A 5 for IGN means mediocre. They describe it as something that is bland and unremarkable. And I guess with that definition, I wouldn't be like super uncomfortable personally categorizing Star Wars Outlaws that way, maybe. I haven't played enough that I feel confident saying that. But that
Star Wars Outlaw, in my opinion, was between a 4 and a 5. That's where it was for me. Because, like, you look at the ones, like, ones are like that King Kong game and, like, Gollum. Like, yeah, like a 5 should be below average. Well, it's like, also, I think that I disliked it more. A 4 at max, they get Penguin. Yeah, I would say probably a 4, if I had to say.
It becomes complicated when you realize how many games do fit below the 5 category, and that's kind of the point of this video. 5 is not actually baseline average, and it makes sense that most scores that these outlets give are going to be above a 5, because in comparison to the amount of video games that come out, the AAA games that people are playing, the games that are popular enough for people to even be talking about them, for somebody to need to write a review about them, are going to be in that upper category. Like, there are so many video games that come out. And the truth is, most games that release are very, 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 very flawed. Most games that come out...
I think that she brings up a good point, and I think this is probably the best point that she's made in the video, is that the games that are popular by confirmation bias are going to have a certain level of quality. So you're going to create a feedback loop of looking at better games on average because those are the games that people want to see reviews for. I think that's actually a very good point.
Don't even have an inch of the complexity.
It's like kind of like a survivorship bias type argument. Yeah, exactly.
That you see in something like Star Wars Outlaws. And you may take that with some kind of like offense, as though you think that Star Wars Outlaws is not complex. And that would be totally fair if you compare it to everything else that you've played. But if you compare it to the games
that's actually good
that come out, it has incredibly complex systems. Most games aren't even close to that level of complexity. Most games that release have one song, they have maybe 2 inputs, they have very few mechanics. They're just, you kind of press the same button over and over and over again. A lot of them crash all the time. They're very buggy. Sometimes they don't even have music. Most games that come out do not have even like an inch of the complexity or nuance that you are used to in AAA video games. Bad UI, unintuitive controls, just all of the things that net them somewhere between 1 to 5 on a game review scale. That means that they kind of need the space for the 5 to 10 for the...
I think that's a good point, and she's right. But if you want to make the argument that the reason why these games are generally a 7 is because you have the confirmation bias of only picking games that are popular, then shouldn't you change the way that your grading is so you have more gradation between like what a good and average game is? Because like, so, because I still feel like you run into the same problem. Because if all you're grading are 7s, then maybe change what a 7 looks like. Like, why don't we have a 7.1 or a 7.9 or something like that, right? Because like that's what really matters at that point. The average, so like, yeah, basically if you're grading on a curve, which is what she's saying, I think this is a good argument, by the way. If you're grading on a curve, though, I absolutely think that that should be taken into consideration. My counterpoint, my expectations from AAA studio are a lot different from an indie studio. Yeah, I think so too.
other games. We're basically at a point where hundreds, if not thousands of games are released every single day, usually from one-person teams who do not do it full-time. You don't even hear about these games, but
yeah,
I'm going to do an experiment for you all right now. I'm going to boot up the 3 most recent releases on Steam and play them for you right now. I don't know what they are. This is not rehearsed. It's not going to be the games on the bestsellers list.
It's like My Stepmother is a Fuda Part 7. You know? I'm expecting it to be some fucking stupid-ass shit.
It's just the most recent releases, new releases on Steam, and I will show you exactly what I'm talking about of like what majority of video games that release actually look like. Okay, everybody, I've downloaded the 3 most recent releases on Steam. They are Doll Catching Simulator, Future Breach Youngblood, which is free to play, so that's pretty cool, and Zool Dungeon.
Ooh.
Let's start with Doll Catching Simulator. I need settings so I can... It immediately crashed. Tried to change the aspect ratio and it immediately crashed. This time it didn't even have a menu. Cat? Oh, AD key, switch the claw machine. Enter key select. Okay, here we go. Enter key inserts coins. Enter. AD keys move space.
At this very moment, this game has more players than Concord.
This has physics, which is actually pretty cool. Enter. Just like in real life, they've nailed it, to be honest. Pick it up, pick it up. We got a cat! Wow. Huge! Am I the world's first, what was it called? Doll Catching Simulator speedrunner? I might be.
Oh, you have to
feel
give
like
it
that's
to the
maybe
girl.
it. I did get a couple of cats. Look at me go.
Okay.
I like this. This is cool.
Is she comparing this to a Ubisoft
It's Doll
game?
Catching Simulator. It functions, to be honest.
Yeah, but the problem is that, like, I think that her point makes a lot of sense, but the truth is that IGN doesn't review those games. So, like, if you're not reviewing those games and you're only reviewing the best of the best games, then I think that you need to have a recontextualized 1 out of 10 scale. Because if you're only reviewing games that are good, then why do you even have the bottom numbers? You see what I'm saying?
It's very simple. The art is not great, but it works. 7 out of 10. Next, we have Zool Dungeon. I have no idea what this is. Trap? Zool, not enough. Unlock trap first. Okay, okay. Right-click to spawn your monster. Click him.
Jesus.
Spawn him. Click him. Spawn it. What's the timer for? Why am I being timed? The surviving hunter, 100 destroy hunter camps. I'm earning money, I think, maybe?
That's how much cryptocurrency the game's mining in the background.
PT on summon, increased movement speed on... Oh, yeah, okay, I can wait. I can give him little buffs. That's cool. So now we got like a jacked up Hobu. Am I trying to kill these guys? Oh, okay, yeah.
Man.
Okay, got it. I think this is... Maybe I just spawn these in to kill these dudes.
Vampire Survivors. Oh, you're dead?
Well, that's Zool Dungeon.
Wow.
Compelling. Last but not least,
crazy.
Future Youngblood, a game that is apparently made with Unity. Game? Hello, this is a preview build to show the initial gameplay. Later versions will... Oh, okay, hang on.
7 out of 10?
As it turns out, Future Breach Youngblood was just a demo, so I'm going to go back to the Steam library, or the Steam store, rather, and we will get... Deep in the dungeon!
Oh, wow.
I need to reach floor 240 to escape from here. Okay, I like the music.
I feel like this one's pretty good.
Not something I could see myself playing for a super long time at this rate, but it's really just arrow keys, which means you can move through it pretty fast, and it's, you know what, it's pretty fun. It's
yeah, it's not so bad.
It's not bad. You get the idea. Probably the top 10 looks like that kind of thing. Maybe...
Yeah, but here's the thing, right? It's like IGN doesn't review those games. So, like, if you don't review those games aren't effectively inside of the 10-point rubric. You see what I'm saying? So, like, if they're not reviewing these games, then they're outside of the scope of what 1 through 10 should be.
Even more than that. And websites like IGN have to effectively reserve the lower half of their scales for those games because those games exist. They just very rarely review them because most people don't know what they are. Like, if people aren't searching for them, people aren't really trying to figure out if they need to buy them or not, so you don't really need to write a review for them. But in case one goes viral, like The Day Before, for example, very bad basic video game, they still need to have that bottom half of the scale there for those games. And when you consider how many games are like that, it starts to make a little more sense why you keep seeing AAA games on the other half of the scale. Like, that's the breadth of the scale that is being considered. AAA games are inherently a lot more complex than majority of the games that come out every day, so they are far, far, far more deserving of the top 5 part of that scale. The scale is not...
Oh, you can make a complex game that's a piece of shit. You can make a lot of pieces of shit that are complex. You can have tons of, a convoluted network of garbage. So yeah, Concord, exactly. Zelda Breath of the Wild, exactly, man. Yeah, recycling badass shit. Yeah, it's like if you're not reviewing those games, basically, I think that you need to change, like, for example, like WoW had this problem with like arena ratings where everybody's rating was like, you had a scale that was from like 0 to like 3,000, and the first 1,000 numbers didn't matter at all. I'm sorry, but if that's the way it works, then your scale's broken. Yeah, it makes no sense. Exactly. Yeah. So it's like you need to have it to where like there's a measured gradation so people can accurately be able to judge things. Because again, let's go back to the question, the initial question, what do game reviews exist to do? If game reviews exist to inform the customer, and there are a lot of customers that are saying that 7 out of 10 reviews are oftentimes not accurate, which is really what the criticism is fundamentally, then there is a problem with the fact that there are so many 7 out of 10 game reviews. It's literally that simple.
Just AAA. Does that make sense? Am I articulating this? I remember when Diablo 4 got massively review bombed by the user ratings, maybe a month or so after it came out, which was deserved. They made some disappointing changes, but people were giving it like a 2 out of 10 and calling games journalists shills because they weren't giving it 2 out of 10. But when you see the games that I just showed you, and then you compare it to something like Diablo 4, which has complex systems and enemies and...
To be fair, Diablo 4 was never a 2 out of 10. Anybody saying that it was a 2 out of 10 was just a angry idiot. Nobody thought that. Like, these are protest reviews. It was a 7. I think it was like a 6 or a 7 out of 10 on release, somewhere around there.
Classes and a ton of progression and
like
music.
Now I actually think if you're a casual, this is going to make some people mad. I think that if you're a casual player, Diablo 4 is in the like 8 or 9 category. I think so. For a casual player, like a casual ARPG Andy, yeah, it's in an 8 or a 9. So high? Yeah, I think so. I actually think that like Diablo 4 nailed down the dad audience. Like every person that I know that's like a big Diablo fan is a dad. Like I'm actually thinking about it. Do I know anybody who's like a huge Diablo player? It's not like a streamer or something that isn't a dad. No. Actually, no.
And sound design and art, you can see why it doesn't really exist in the same realm as a lot of the 2s that come out every day. It was functional, and it had this cool feature where you could actually play it for more than 5 minutes without being extremely bored. Basically, Steam is...
That's debatable. Yeah, that part of it was very debatable.
It's full of a lot of things that like barely count as video games or what the general public understands a video game to be. Most of them aren't even really worth reviewing, but the scale has to still exist for them. And it's like, I get why if you've only played...
Why does it have to exist for them? Why? Why do you need a scale? So why do you need to have a scale that's going to include games that you're never going to use it for? I don't think that it needs to include them.
AAA games, have you only played really, really popular games that do rise above, the schlock of majority of the stuff that comes out, that you would have a skewed perception of what the scale looks like. Like your scale is probably different to the scale of some other fucking guy based on just what you've played, where reviewers often have played a lot of stuff that falls on the lower half of that scale and is the reason the lower half of that scale exists. I think you could pretty easily make a case that they should just not touch those lower half games at all, and that you could like have a scale.
Well, it's not that they shouldn't, it's that they don't. They're not reviewing those games. They never have. They're always going to review because, like, if you're a game reviewer, let's think about this logically. If you're a game reviewer, you want to review the games that people want to watch reviews for. Primarily, they're going to be reviewing those kinds of games.
for AAA games and they could be two separate things. But I think that would also be pretty complicated to explain to audiences in a lot of cases, where I feel like it's probably easier to explain, no, a 0 or a 1 or a 2 is for games that don't function. Diablo 4 making changes that negatively...
Well, like, people say that they do. Let's pull it up and let's look at it right now. Let's look at the reviews. All reviews. So, latest reviews. Let's look in the past 3 months. Or, sorry, past 3 weeks. 7, 9, 6, 9, 6, 8, 7, 7, 8, 8, 5, 8, 6, 8, 7, 9, 8, 8, 8, 7, 8, 8, 6, 5, 8, 9, 7, 4. 8, 7, 5, 8, 8, 7, 5, 7, 9, 6, 7, 8, 7, 8, 5, 9, 8, 8, 8, 9, 8, 6, 9, 5. Look at this. So they're not even doing it. You see what I'm saying? This goes all the way down to Space Marine 2. They're not reviewing these games. It's not happening. You see what my point is? So, like, if you functionally took out the bottom 5 points, only, like, 1 or 2 games would even qualify. So do you see how, like, clearly this is a problem? Filter by rank? Well, this is by latest. All I want to show you guys is that functionally, anything below like a 5 doesn't exist. Very, very rarely do I see anything below a 5. There's like a couple of 4s down there. There's another 4 right there. The day before got a 1 out of 10. Yeah, but the day before was like an exception case because of how much hype it had. I see what you're saying. Yeah. So like they're not reviewing these games. So why does it matter so much? It matters. So let me explain why it matters. It matters because game reviews are used as a tool for people to make informed purchasing decisions. And if the game reviews are diluted in a way that makes them hard to understand or hard to like be able to like discern like what does this really mean, now the tool doesn't work. Like that's the, so like again, it's like this is the problem, is like you have to look at it from a product viability or a product value standpoint. Does a lot of games landing on the same number serve the audience in a good way? I think the answer to that is absolutely not.
Impact the game didn't make it completely non-functional, or didn't make it so that the only thing you could do was like play a claw machine.
What a Concord get?
But yeah, you could certainly argue for that if you wanted to. Go ahead. I'm just explaining why it currently exists the way that it does. And to be clear, I'm not trying to defend IGN in making this video in any capacity. Even when I worked there, they had game reviews come out that I staunchly disagreed with. When I worked there, they had the Doom 2016 review, which was written by a freelancer who gave it, it was like an insane low score. Yeah, it was 7.1. For Doom 2016. And I remember like everyone in the office being like, do not fucking agree with that at all. But it was from Joe Gilroy, who did not even work in the IGN office. A total...
Why publish it? Why publish it then? Here's the thing, right? Is like, so this is the problem. Is like, if you're putting something out there and you know that your customers are going to use this as a decision-making tool, don't put it out there. Don't publish it.
Freelancer. I don't think he even wrote for IGN very often. Yeah. Maybe 1 or 2 times. I'm not actually sure. But like they've certainly had review scores that I fundamentally disagreed with. And that's just sort of the reality of reviews being just written by some fucking guy. But yes, this is essentially why you might feel like you see so many review scores that are above a 5, or you feel like the lower half of the scale is being underutilized.
It isn't.
It's why 7s feel like it might be average. And why I've heard people like call to change the 7 to a 5. But it's just when you factor in games that you probably haven't played or probably haven't heard of, the bottom of the scale gets very, very, very full very fast. And you
see, like, here's the thing. I think that she's totally right. Again, I think she's totally right. But those games aren't on the scale anyway. They're not being reviewed. So if you're not reviewing the games that are like this, then you shouldn't have the scale adjusted for them to exist. It's that simple.
AAA games start to look a whole lot better in comparison. And finally, I know that this isn't going to sway anybody who like already feels some way about this, but just to establish it, no publisher is giving an IGN reviewer a bunch of money to influence a review score. There are ways that companies try to manipulate positive review scores in ways that I think are extremely egregious and actually far worse than I think the general public realizes. Like, this stuff is huge. I'm gonna make a whole separate video about this. I was gonna put it in this video.
No, I'm surprised she's not yeah, I'm surprised she's gonna make a video about it. Yeah, now we're talking. Now we're fucking cooking here. Is she said they're not paying huge amounts of money. And she's right. They barely do it for free.
But then it's like too many topics in one video. Yeah. It's a lot. I will make a separate video about basically like publishers, companies trying to influence people to get positive reviews and the manipulative tactics that are used for that. There is so much to say and so much to unpack. But we're just handing somebody money to give a game a score, which, by the way, as an aside, I've seen people recently suggest that IGN was paid to give Star Wars Outlaws the 7 out of 10. Why would Ubisoft pay for a 7? A 7? You're paying a reviewer, you couldn't just slip them, like, you know, company like Ubisoft with a shit ton of money, just like another 50 grand or whatever the fuck, and be like, just make it a 10. Why would they pay for a 7? But handing somebody money to give any review score is extremely illegal. And these companies...
That's not what happens. I think what happens is there's a degree of quid pro quo where these people, what they do is that they give a good review for the game, and then the company, in return, gives them special benefits. Or they have relationships with people that are at the company. And those relationships paint the way that they look at those games in a more favorable light. It kind of goes back to what I was saying before about how I don't like covering drama with things that I'm involved with, like people that I know. Because now I have a conflict of interest. I can't look at this unbiased, because I'm looking at this and I'm like, I know this person, I'm invested in this, right? So something for something, tales all the time. Yeah, exactly. And so like you have a lot of other forms of access journalism. And then also you have the issue of like, you know, for example, Concord. A lot of people, the problem also is that there are a number of metrics that gamers very clearly care about that reviewers don't care about. So for example, like DEI stuff, right? Like the Concord pronoun stuff. It's very obvious that a lot of people didn't like that. It's obvious, like same with Assassin's Creed. But game reviewers are not taking that into consideration in a way that reflects what an average person cares about. So when you have game reviewers that are actively ignoring metrics that players care about, you can't be surprised when players feel like game reviews don't accurately reflect products. I didn't care. Everybody has their own personal opinion, but whenever you're making something for a group of people, you want to look at what the consensus is.
Have giant legal teams who are so hardcore and so intense about this kind of stuff. Their whole job is to prevent the company from getting sued or getting fined. That is the job of these legal departments. I have worked with some of these legal departments. They are annoyingly hardcore. Stupid legal rules where they try to avoid getting sued for the dumbest shit. You're like, nobody's going to sue you for that. And they're like, doesn't matter. Somebody could, so don't do it. Paying somebody to have positive sentiment, even if you disclose it, is illegal. Did you know that? So like if I do a sponsored ad here on YouTube, they cannot ask me to say something that I don't believe. They are not allowed to ever say, hey, can you say this sentence?
But if you say negative things, they don't bring you back again. And that's what causes people. There is a chilling effect that creates, and that chilling effect creates a positive feedback loop for the people that are looking to do that. There's the implication. There's the implication. If they talk bad about the game company might not give them an early copy of the game. That's right. Or there might be privileges or opportunities that they can't even imagine that they will not have access to.
I think I've received pushback on that maybe once where they were like, can you say that? And I was like, I don't feel that way. And they had to be like, okay, they are not allowed to do that. That is very, very, very illegal and taken very, very seriously. So paying for positive sentiment without disclosure is going to get you fined. But even with disclosure, also going to get you fined. Like extremely illegal, again, taken very seriously. And asking games journalists specifically to lie about review scores, I think is one of the dumbest things that a company could possibly do. Like, that's going to come out so fast if it were actually happening. It's an industry full of people who are so poorly paid and are often very bored with the stuff they're able to write from an industry that gives them like no information about anything and is constantly withholding things and just making them like rehash press releases because the games industry is so cagey about information. Frankly, they are desperate a lot of the time to write the article that gets their name out there or gets views or makes people like them. It gives them the prestige of breaking this huge conspiracy news story. Like, so many.
I don't believe that. I don't. Because nobody was writing articles that was critical of Concord for the reasons that everybody was describing. Everybody was writing articles that were critical of, like, basically, so list of events that games journalism has had one opinion on. Game science, Black Myth Wukong, sexism accusation. Number 2, Stellar Blade. And female, I don't know, like, and sexualization. Let's say that. Hogwarts Legacy. And, you know, J.K. Rowling trans stuff. I think that's how to spell it. I don't really care. Let's see. Here's another one. Concord. And pronouns. Slash other types of, like, DEI stuff. Right? Just put this in quotations. I don't really have, like, a better term for it. But, like, yeah, we're gonna go with that. Assassin's Creed Shadows and Racism. Yes. And the, presentation and the inclusion of Yasuke. So this is the problem. The problem is that there have been a lot of controversies that have happened. And every single one of these controversies has had one singular opinion to it. Oh, Space Marine CEO comment. Good idea. And, you know, like, not verified, right? Every single one of them had the exact cookie cutter same opinion about every single one of these topics. That's crazy. Yep, they have been lockstep. Exactly. The writing's on the wall, right? Yeah, Wukong, no female bullshit. Yeah, well, this is the sexism, I guess, female... yeah, female representation, right? All this about sexuality. A lot of it is, yes, definitely. But, like, at the end of the day, almost like it's propaganda. Do you think that there's an agenda pushing a narrative? I think that it is undeniable that there is an agenda and there's a narrative being pushed. It is undeniable. I can't imagine seeing, like, I mean, this many points on the graph and you can't draw a line. Give me a break. Like, what the fuck? And so it's too samey. Yeah, exactly. And so pure tradition should be ignored. Yes, they've admitted it already. Yeah, if people say it themselves, there's no conspiracy. Well, regardless of what the reason is, I think that's what ends up happening. No criticism or worries about Veilguard's gameplay and visuals. I don't really know about that. I think that we'll have to wait and finish it off. As long as the breaking news doesn't go against the groupthink, journalists are happy to report on something for notoriety. Yeah, well, what I'm saying is that all of these topics have diluted and damaged gaming journalism credibility in a tremendous way. And I think this is where the real problem lies, and this is where these issues come from, is that effectively you have one unilateral opinion, and everybody is lockstep with that opinion, and everybody has to pay some degree of credibility to that opinion and pretend like it matters. And that's where the issue is. DMs and Discord servers possibly hold answers? Yeah, I don't know. How many of these rumors are there of publishers not giving out review copies or having blacklists that we know about? That would be enough to fuel the 7 out of 10 theory. I don't know. Like, I actually think that I think that there's like a degree of that, but I think that the problem is like it's very multifaceted. But like topics like this are why I don't trust them.
I would say 90% of people who work in that games media industry would be frothing, chomping at the bit at the opportunity to leak this story. If it were happening, it would have leaked 1,000 times over. And I actually don't doubt that it was happening in the 90s and 2000s before a lot of the more strict regulations.
I actually don't agree with that. I don't, because during Gamergate, there were a lot of issues. Like even Total Biscuit said that, you know, like one of the companies that that was like, you know, they wanted him to review a game. They told him that he could keep the Xbox afterwards after he reviewed the game because they sent him an Xbox to play the game on. I don't believe that. I think that a lot of them, because like there is a bit of a contradiction here, right? Because like there's the component of these game reviewers don't have any money. And also these game reviewers need to have access journalism. They need to have all of these extra tools for access because this allows them to make money. So I think that like while they're not being paid directly by the, I don't think that there's a company writing checks that gives game journalists a check to give a game a 7 out of 10. Like that's crazy. No, that's not what happens. But there is a degree of quid pro quo with the AAA game devs that you do not give their games super low ratings. I think it's happening. And I think it's obvious. Sorry. I think it's fucking obvious. This is spoken by someone who's clearly never worked around journalists. They absolutely would be thrilled to break a story like this. This is career defining for them. They get to move to proper journalism job instead of getting paid peanuts to review games. The problem is that a lot of these things are not hard. Like, they're not like, we're going to give you a bunch of money. There are these very soft and amorphous and very hard to define advantages that companies give certain groups of people and not others. So it's not like a really, really easy way to look at it. It's like it's a confluence of things that happen. Yeah, it's in plain sight. Exactly. Their jobs are stupid. Why take a risk? Yeah. Like access to an event, or like getting invited to an event, or having the people talk to you like off the record. A lot of things like that are very valuable.
Came in, of course, companies are going to try to do it. They just can't anymore. And publishers do have other ways of trying to influence review scores. Like I said, I'll have a whole separate video about that. But they are not giving game reviewers money to give games a 10 out of 10. Again, just like...
I agree with her. That's not happening.
Think about everything you've ever disagreed with somebody on. Think about the dumbest fucking thing that you've seen on the internet that you disagreed with somebody on. Your toilet paper. You put it over or under. Heated disagreements about that stuff. Over is correct, by the way. Anyone who puts it under, I will literally, in your house, if I see that you have the toilet paper under,
change it.
I will change it in your house. I don't care. You and some fucking guy are gonna have different opinions. It's boring, but it's true. And as an aside, on my own aside, I promise you, if I ever find any evidence or any even suggestion that game reviewers are being paid off, I will tell you in a heartbeat.
Well, like, I'd be curious to hear what her opinion would be of the Star Wars. Let me see if I can show you guys this. So if I look at this, for example, and Ubisoft buttered up YouTubers and influencers with trips to Disneyland and boat tours to promote Star Wars Outlaws. So a lot of people and content creators were flown out by Ubisoft, and the biggest marketing campaign ever was flying out YouTubers and influencers to Los Angeles to give them 4 hours with the game. And so, wow, that's amazing. Location was really polished up, and there was a day at Disneyland and something like that. So Ubisoft spent a lot on that. So what about that? Like, I look at this. This is access journalism. Content creators and streamers are not news reviewers. Any site like IGN isn't getting nearly as much of a focus. Well, what I'm saying is that, like, this is basically the same thing. Do you really think that they don't get any advantages and it's only influencers that have this happen? I mean, come on. Basically, they invited UK creators to get there early because our flights are booked, etc. He cited a post here. And also, I don't think that YouTube content creators are any different than a journalist. Like, I view all of these people as tools that review games to give people informed decision-making abilities on purchasing games. And if a content creator is doing this, it's just as bad as a journalist doing it. They're the same thing. Like, because they're effectively doing the same, they're fulfilling the same role. They're marketing channels, exactly. And so, majority of YouTubers, there's billboards. Yeah, exactly, right? Gamers Nexus won't let a corp rep buy them even a soda. Well, that's very common with certain types of journalists too. And that's basic journalism ethics. But my point is that something like this is extremely problematic, in my opinion. And it's, again, there's no money being exchanged, but there are benefits that happen. And also, there's a chilling effect of knowing that this happens to other people that were going to be critical about the game. And this is how it happens. They see people like this that get flown out by Ubisoft, and they get these advantages, and now they think twice about criticizing the next game. That's how it happens. Payment equivalents? Yep, that's how it is.
So many subscribers. People would be so happy with me. It would get so many views, so much credibility. She finally outed it. Wow, look at this person go. That's my epics. Instead, I'm doing my routinely dumb bitch move of telling you the truth that I know most of you probably don't want to hear. Not most of you. It's just the ones who don't want to hear it really don't want to hear it, and are definitely going to get mad at me in the comment sections of this video.
People already made up their mind.
Yeah. In fact, I will probably lose subscribers for this video. I actively reject the proven to be excellent strategy of saying the thing the masses would like to hear and make the controversial video that will force people to yell at me. All of that to say, it would be a lot easier for me, or as someone who actually does work in media, to come out and say reviewers are being paid off. If it were happening, they would have done it by now a million times over already. I would have done it by now a million times over already. I don't review games that don't accept codes. I have no reason to lie to you about this. It's just not happening. It's just some fucking guy. There are also just a bunch of factors where it comes to some fucking guy's opinion, where the person who reviews the game is
also like the game reviews not being reflective of what people want doesn't necessarily have to come from the customer, or sorry, from the publisher or the developer. Like, at the end of the day, it could just be also games journalists that have different standards, and they're pushing those standards that are not something that people care about. You see what I'm saying? Yeah, it's a bunch of guys' fault. Yeah, exactly, right? It could just be their fault as well. Either way, the review is fucked.
The most likely to be excited about that game because they put their name down on the sheet where they said they wanted to review it, so they are likely to be more interested in it. Basically, some fucking guy is probably into the thing that he signed up to play however many hours of and write a review of. That's why he signed up to play it. And my suggestion for people looking for game reviews that they align with is actually to just find an individual or a couple of individuals.
She is so fucking right. Absolutely. 100%. This is what you should do.
You are like one writer or one YouTuber who you really align with and actively seek out their opinions. I don't even feel like it makes sense to read every IGN game review when IGN is just 20 different some fucking guys who have vastly different opinions from one another
100%.
Even, and frequently disagree on review scores even as employees of the same company. Like I said, while I worked there, there were review scores that were given out that I really did not agree with. But there's like nothing you can really do about that because I'm not the some fucking guy who reviewed that particular thing. What I do personally is just ask
But like if you're making review scores that on a regular basis are that problem and you're creating dissonance with your audience at a regular basis, at a certain point you have to acknowledge that something is wrong. Like at a certain point you have to realize that like at some point it's wrong.
I don't read reviews at all. Literally never. Right? They mean nothing to me whatsoever. And I even felt this way when I worked in that space. I just asked friends what they think of something and what they like about it and what they didn't like about it. And based on what I know about that friend and what they said they liked or they didn't like, I can make an assessment on whether I will or will not like something. Basically, 7 out of 10 is the average because the scale accounts for the amount of games that do not have even half the complexity of most of the games that you play and does need to have the lower half of that scale in case one of those games gets reviewed. Again, I'm not trying to defend that, just trying to explain it for anyone who might be interested or like...
Yeah, I think if that's the reason why they're doing it, that's a really bad scale. I do. I think it's a very bad scale.
You know, if this video makes anyone go, oh, yeah, that makes sense, then great. And remember, game reviews are just the opinion of some fucking guy.
She's right. Yeah, no, she's absolutely right about it. But at the same time, I think the game reviews, I absolutely think that it's a problem because they're not reviewing those games. Like on a regular basis, they're really not, except for like weird exceptions, etc. So if IGN isn't giving these game reviews out a lot, then they should recalibrate their score. A lot of people consider 7 the average and not a 5. I don't know. I feel like, honestly, I can't see how Star Wars Outlaws is a 7. Like, in any metric. Like, what is this? GameRanks is the only channel I trust nowadays. I feel like you guys should probably find, and this was a good video though. I mean, like, she was right about a lot of this stuff, and like I think that like it's like back and forth, because I do think that games journalism, it's very clear that there's an agenda. It's so obvious that there's an agenda when there have been this many issues that I can think of right off the top of my head, with, like, to be fair, from a little bit of help with chat. Of like things that have happened in games media that has been universally reported on in one direction. That to me, and also that direction is in opposition to what it seems like the public wants to hear. I'm sorry. You can't see all these points and not draw a line. I can't do it. I can't. I don't think the publisher's paying them, but I think that they have ulterior motives that cause them to not give reviews in a way that they should give reviews. Is Tokyo Game Stream still happening? It absolutely is. I'll link you guys the thing. There's definitely game journalists and studio under table cooperation. I think that, again, there's a form of access journalism and a chilling effect that access journalism creates. Well, the general gamer public doesn't care about these issues and have expressed that, but they seem to think that we do care. Something is going wrong for sure. Yes, game reviews only exist to serve as a decision-making tool for a customer. So if game reviews are deviating from user reviews, then fundamentally, these game reviews are failing at doing their job. That's the way it is. That's it. Do you think journalism will adapt to face the several 7 out of 10 being huge failures? I don't think so. I think what's going to happen with games journalism is that it's going to die. I think it's overstayed its welcome already. And I'll tell you why. Basically, the reason why is because why do you need a games journalist? Like, just in let me take a step back. Video games are visual media. And in visual media, what makes the most sense is for visual media to be reflected in, with other types of visual media. Making a YouTube video about a game as a review is a simply superior method of making of giving people an evaluation of the game. It is. It's more comprehensive and it's better in every single way. Also, it's more monetizable. And so you have individuals, like, for example, like Skill Up or Mortismal Gaming, Force Gaming, like, you can come up with a bunch of other ones that are like reviewers, like Angry Joe. Like, these guys can review a game and they can focus on just playing this game and go all the way through it. That is a massive fucking advantage. Tremendous advantage. And the fact that, like, IGN, like, for example, like, IGN has an HR department. IGN has... I think they probably have a physical media space, right? I'm not sure. And they have all these extra costs. They have a president. They have a financier, they're like a CFO. Like, there's all these people that work in the company, and you need to dilute the amount of money that you make across all of those people. So they're very big, and because of that, they need to do things that cause them to lose money. Watching someone play a game is almost superior to reading about it. And also, like, the other issue is that, and this is going to be something that's, like, much more of a, like, meta level thing, and I don't know if you guys agree with me about this, but I actually think that a lot of cases, writers suck. I think they suck in just a very general sense. I think that a lot of writing is either pretentious, it's badly done, or it's just, like, basically AI. Like, most people aren't very good at communicating, and if you read the writing of somebody who's actually, like, a skilled writer, and then you compare it to, like, what, a random person would do, again, it's the difference between Game of Thrones seasons 1 through 4 and Game of Thrones seasons 7 and 8. Totally different universe. It's the difference between Rings of Power and Lord of the Rings. It's the dialogue. And I think that's what's really missing. Well, I was writer at Santa Monica Studios. Yeah, but God of War is pretty good. So, like, she's doing a good job, right? Santa Monica Studios makes God of War. So, like, I don't think God of War is an example of that. It's because they went to college. I think the problem is that a lot of these people, and also it's that, I think it's a theater kid thing, right? Where it's like, I'm trying to show off that, like, I have, like, this, like, deeper knowledge in types of subjects. I think you're wrong about that. The writers are right. But there's no history to games if we don't have writing. I can see us now in 2012 or 1994 misrepresented by people that write. What I'm saying is that there's not a large enough audience to support a publishing media company. And I think that IGN does it the best. I think IGN will outlive all of the other gaming media companies. And the reason why is because they are focusing on YouTube and they've diversified the way that they are making money. IGN is doing something that a lot of other companies are not doing. And I think that's a good thing.